It was a defining moment in my career of showing that it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It's about every time you get back up and keep pushing forward.
Welcome to the Shakeout Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Van Buskirk. The Tokyo Paralympic Games wrapped up last week, and our Athletics Canada team came away with 8 medals. One of those medals belongs to 21-year-old sprinter Marissa Papakonstantinou, who won bronze in the T64 100 meter. Marissa's been a rising star since she was fitted with her first running blade as a preteen, and she made her first Paralympic Games at just 16 years old. But a slew of injuries and other setbacks have led to a rocky few years for this talented young athlete. In this episode, Marissa shares the lessons she's learned through adversity, the power of representation, and what comes next for this newly minted Paralympic medalist. Welcome back to the Shakeout Podcast. Today, I am speaking with Marissa Papakonstantinou, who won a bronze medal at the Tokyo Paralympic Games last month in the T64 100 meter. She set a new Canadian record and personal best time of 13:07 in the process. Marissa lives and trains in Toronto, and that's where I've reached her today, only I think about 5 days since her return from Tokyo. So Marissa, thank you so much for joining us on the Shakeout Podcast and for taking the time under what I can imagine is still some pretty extreme jet lag.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Maybe I'll just start by asking, how are you feeling now, only 5 days removed from your return from Tokyo?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just coming off the jet lag now, so I'm definitely feeling a little better. I think still just like overall tired, like mentally, emotionally from the whole experience. But I think I'm still processing like everything that happened over there. Like it was just such a like crazy few days of competition for me, and I had a lot of fun, and I'm just really still processing everything, kind of like taking some downtime as much as I can. I really haven't done a whole lot since I've been home, other than just some schoolwork. So yeah, just really kind of trying to embrace everything that I had accomplished over in Tokyo and process that, but then also just spend some time with family and friends and do absolutely nothing.
Well, you're very modest, because your version of doing absolutely nothing, as you said, is jumping right back into your schoolwork. Tell us where you're at school and what you're studying. Yeah,
I mean, I'm at Ryerson for sports media. I'm in my 5th year now in the programs because I had to take a pretty relaxed last couple years just like preparing for Tokyo and everything. But yeah, I'm in my final like practicum thesis project, so it's going to get really busy really quickly. But I mean, it's a passion project that I'm really excited about. I'm going to kind of dive into doing a documentary series on, kind of developing parasport from the grassroots level more. So that's something I'm really excited about. I think that there's like so much room for improvement in that space in Ontario and like, of course, outside of Ontario and like the greater scheme of the country. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm up to right now.
Wow, that sounds like a big undertaking, but it's neat in a way, I guess, that you have something to jump right back into following the games. I know that definitely the physical break is well-deserved and probably quite necessary, but I've spoken with a few other Olympians and Paralympians who say like they come home and there's a little bit of a void, not really knowing kind of where to put your energies and your focus. So it's great that you have this to come into. I hope that it's not too stressful for you, but it sounds like it's something you're very passionate about. So we'll be excited to hear see the finished product of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice that I get to be able to put like my energy into something else, but I am kind of jealous seeing like a lot of other Paralympians and Olympians on like vacations right now, because I've noticed like everyone's like, Olympics are over, like time to go on vacation. I'm like, oh, that must be so nice. But having said that, like it is nice to also have like, my focus somewhere else as well, because I think like a lot of the time athletes in general just like really identify with like one thing, and that's their sport, and it can be like very mentally tough on you when you're not doing that one thing that you identify so much with. So I think that's what I'm really grateful with school and like what I want to eventually do in the future, which is like get into broadcasting and like media and stuff. So I think that, yeah, in the greater scheme of things, it's going to pay off a lot.
Yeah, good for you. Hopefully you can find some good balance with that this fall. Well, look, let's jump right into that. I'm curious about how you got into the sport of track and field. I know that you grew up very athletic, playing a number of different sports, I believe in both sort of the able-bodied and para spaces. Maybe you can take us back and tell us about your introduction to the world of sport and specifically to track and field.
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, I was really active growing up. I did a lot of different sports. I honestly thought that I was going to be going places for soccer. I really loved soccer. That was a sport I played for 13 years and at like a decently high level, at like the provincial level. And I don't know, like I also did other things like basketball and tennis and skiing, but like I was always so infatuated by track and field because I kind of like grew up around it because my dad's a high school principal and one of his students, his name's Marlon Allen, previous students, he used to be one of the fastest men in Canada when he was like 16 years old or something like that. Like it was insane. So he used to bring me to a lot of his track meets and like track practices and stuff like that. My parents didn't want me to do track too early because it's an individual sport. They wanted me to continue playing team sports and, you know, doing like sports for fun, of course, because at that age, that's what mattered the most. And then when I was 12, I was able to get my first running blade because I met the minimum weight requirement for it. And so, yeah, I got my blade. I entered like a track club called Phoenix Athletics just in Scarborough, so pretty local for me. And I guess the rest is history.
No kidding. And what a history it's been. Well, maybe for our listeners who aren't as familiar, can you tell us about your classification within the parasport space? Yeah,
so my classification is something called T64. I was previously considered a T44, which was a more broader spectrum of my disability class. So the T44 prior to was considered an impairment below the knee on one leg. So that was a little more broad in terms of like it could have been an amputation. It also could have been like a stiff ankle or a clubbed foot. Like that could also have been considered T44. But now they've split up the classification. So the T44 is still a remaining classification. It is just now mostly for I guess we call them like stiffies. Like they're like where they don't really have like ankle or like lower limb deficiency. And then my T64 classification is an amputation strictly below the knee.
So you were born without your right foot, is that correct?
Yes, so I'm considered a Symes amputee, so I actually am not missing like any bones, ligaments. I was just like, it didn't fully develop in the womb. There's no particular reason that it happened. It could have been an umbilical cord thing. It could have been like a tear. There's no specific reason. Yeah. Okay, but it sounds like you said, getting fitted with that first blade really has kind of, part of the pun, but been something that's propelled you into this incredible career in the world of track. So, I mean, you said you were 12 when you got first fitted. Is that correct? Yeah. And like, believe it or not, I actually like really did not like running before I got my blade because it was just so much harder without it. Running felt like such a chore. And when I got that blade, it really felt like effortless and like I had 2 feet in a sense. Like it was just like a very surreal kind of sensation. And I got that first blade when I was 12, and I don't know, I really wanted to do long jump. That was the reason why I got into track. Like I said, like I really didn't even like running that much. And then I had my coach tell me that, you know, you have to be fast to be a long jumper. You have to have like some form of speed and power. And so he put me on like a sprinting program to learn how to run properly. And I honestly didn't really go back to jumping. There were like points throughout high school that I like tried. And then a bunch of injuries happened, and long jump is very hard on your body. So that's why I just like didn't really revisit it and just focused on the 100 and 200 and started to get really good at them. So I just kept my focus on sprinting.
Yeah. And I mean, when you talk about getting really good at them, you experienced a huge amount of success at a really young age. So I believe you made your international athletics debut at the 2015 IPC World Championships when you were only 15 years old. And then you made your Olympic debut the following year at 16 years old in Rio. I mean, that's so young to be making those kinds of teams and to be having the success that you had. It sounded like that was pretty fast tracked, again, pardon the pun, but like you really, you were introduced to it and right away you had this, great amount of success. And it sounds like you really started to enjoy it more as well. Maybe you can tell us about those first few years of international competition and being one of the youngest track athletes ever to compete in the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was kind of crazy, but I'm very grateful for those experiences because although at the time, I was still making top 8 in the world. Like I was making finals, made both finals at my first world championships. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I was performing, I guess, to what Athletics Canada standards were and everything. But having said that, they really were experiences under the belt to prepare me the best way possible for this games. It was all leading up to 2020. And I mean, throughout the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, there were quite a few adversities that I had to overcome. I mean, I went to the Paralympics when I was 16, but I also got disqualified in my very first race after qualifying for the finals. And then tore my hamstring in 2017 in front of 40,000 people in podium position in the 200 meter. So, and then I was also injured in 2019 going into world championships. There's just been a lot of different things, but I feel a lot of situations that sprinters deal with throughout their athletic careers, hamstring injuries and getting disqualified and all those different things. I experienced them all back to back when I was really young, and also trying to learn, how to be a better athlete, how to be a good role model for other people, and how to kind of navigate this high performance world and this high performance setting, while also still being mentally tough on top of that. So all those experiences, they were really hard dealing with them in the moment, but I'm very grateful to have had all those experiences because I think they really prepared me for what's to come, what has happened this year, what's to come in the next, 3 years leading into Paris and hopefully LA in 2028. So, I just feel I was able to really let go of all those difficulties that I've had to overcome over the last few years this year, and kind of use that as fuel and fire and experience under my belt to really be able to show up at this Paralympics and just compete. And I mean, I think what happened was I was able to unlock just confident racing here. In the past, there's always been, some doubts going into major championships or feeling underprepared. And from the get-go, I was feeling the most prepared I ever had coming into this Paralympic Games. And so I just said to myself, I'm going to go out and run my personal best because I was in PB shape, run my personal best every single race, and wherever that lands me, it lands me. I took the focus off of being on the podium because in the past, it's made me sick to my stomach. Just the thought of working so hard and knowing that it's attainable, but not ending up on the podium. And so it was just becoming too distracting to my process. So that's where, I just really said to myself, just go run your personal best, and most importantly, have fun. I think I'd have the most fun competing ever in my life, and I really found the love for the sport again. At the end of the day, that's what I told myself, because you can't control what other people do. It's an individual sport. Track is so unique in that sense where you can have the best day of your life, but someone else could also, and that could detain from you kind of achieving that accomplishment. And so that's where I kind of took that focus off of being on the podium and just running my personal best. And that's all that myself or anyone can ask for me at the end of the day.
Absolutely. You faced so much adversity over the last 5 years, physically, mentally, emotionally. And it sounds like the growth and maturity that has come out of that is something that you really can't manufacture in any other way other than having gone through it. And I want to talk, I want to unpack a lot of what you just said there, but I maybe want to go back to those 2016 Rio Paralympic Games, because you talked about being DQ'd in the 200. And I believe that was a lane violation. Is that correct? Yeah,
I literally, the outside of my foot just barely touched the inside of the line. I didn't even know I had done it because it was just so minor. Because I remember seeing the board after the race. I was like, sweet, PB, made it through to the final. But it was definitely, there was definitely a lot of waterworks. I was only 16. I was like, what just happened? Like, I've never been disqualified for a race in my life. And of course it had to happen here in like my Paralympic debut race. But yeah, like, again, I never did it after that. So good lesson learned.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think those are the kind of things that, again, only happen probably once in a career. And they're an easy thing to do. I mean, I'm not a sprinter, obviously, but you see this all the time, especially in the 200 where you're starting on that curve in lanes. And, you know, it's unfortunately sometimes I think just up to the line judge to make that call in the moment, right? And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. But that's awesome that it hasn't happened since. And then so you had run a personal best. I know you were disqualified. That must have been hugely disappointing, but you showed what you were capable of, having run so well and performing on demand at the moment. And then 2017 comes around. You, I think, were in great shape again. And we'll try to link it in the show notes for this episode because that race is so beautiful and heartbreaking to watch because you can see the moment where you, I think, actually tear your hamstring tendon in the race, right? Maybe you can walk us through that race and what it felt like in the moment and what it meant to get up and actually finish because you finished the race despite doing it on a torn hamstring.
Yeah, I mean, going into that World Championships, I think I was focusing on the podium. Like, I put a lot of pressure on myself to medal because I was ranked third in the world going into that year with the time I had come into Worlds with. I knew I was, again, like, in personal best shape. Like, I could run even faster. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to redeem myself from the year prior in Rio after getting disqualified. There was just, like, a lot of pressures I was putting on myself. And, you know, going into that race, I was feeling confident, but again, like also feeling that pressure. There was a lot of stress. I was not sleeping very well going into that race either. And, you know, in the warm-up, I kind of remember having like a little bit of a hamstring tightness, but it was nothing like out of the normal. Like, I feel like all of us, like sprinters, runners in general, like always have some kind of like tightness or like pain. Like, I don't think anyone ever truly runs like pain-free completely. So yeah, there was nothing like alarming or red flags. Was feeling like really bouncy going into the call room. I was like, this is great. I'm feeling good. And then I think honestly, that corner at that time was probably like the best corner I'd run in my life. And coming off the bend, like I was about in bronze medal position and like feeling like I was able to also like kick it into next gear coming off the corner. And yeah, like within a split second, like it just absolutely popped. Like there's no other way to describe it. It just went. A lot of people just thought I fell, but I was like, no, I didn't just fall. Like, my hamstring is in 2 pieces right now. But I mean, like, I honestly thought in the moment, I was like, I remembered that race. It was a 400-meter runner on the back stretch had like torn his hamstring. His like father ran onto the track. Like, I thought of that in that moment. I was like, no, you need to get up and finish this race. And like at the moment, I didn't really think of like the implications that would arise by doing that. And like positive, of course. Like, a lot of people in the stadium gave me like a standing ovation. I was obviously in a lot of pain and wasn't really thinking about that at the time. But looking back, I think it was such a special moment of showing people like perseverance and truly just like never giving up. And it was a prime example of like, when you fall down, get back up, because I quite literally fell down. So yeah, I mean, like Rudders UK posted me on Instagram. I was kind of like blowing up in the UK, like the picture of me like literally screaming in the rain, holding my hamstring, like kind of went viral. So I mean, like, it was cool because I got such a positive response from so many people about that. And although it was such a hard thing to have to overcome, and like the recovery process for that was quite intense as well, I'm still like, again, grateful that happened, because it kind of was a defining moment in my career of like really, again, like setting that example for people, showing that it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It's about every time you get back up and keep pushing forward. And so I think it did a lot of good for me in ways that I had to learn later on, more than I think would have medaling at that point in time. And I think now today, like, being a Paralympic medalist, all of those experiences have just like defined this story that much further. and make me so much more grateful. And it almost has made this victory that much sweeter, knowing that everything that I've kind of endured has led me to this point. And it's really just like an attribute of like, trust the process, it'll be there. It was crazy because like I kind of teared up after like the 100, but like I like bawled my eyes out in my interview after the 200 final here because I was like, I did it. Like I PB'd, I came like 5th. That was like the best finish I've ever had at the world stage. I don't know. It was weird, but we made it.
That's awesome. And that's something, I'm sorry, I didn't even mention that, you know, you won this bronze medal in the 100, which is obviously an incredible performance. But to your point, you also ran a personal best and came 5th in the 200. So you had a really remarkable games overall. And again, I want to talk about that experience in just a moment. But talking about all of this adversity and about probably more importantly, the lessons learned from the adversity, because again, adversity can be the best teacher if you can see it that way and have that perspective. Of course, then we come into 2020 and there's the postponement of the games because of COVID. I'm wondering what it was like for you training over the last year leading up to these delayed Paralympic Games, and what maybe your past adversity taught you about how to approach the adversity this year.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you asked that because I think literally because of all those things I endured over like the 4-year span, I guess, up to 2019, I was like not having fun in 2019. I was actually quite miserable doing the sport. Like it was getting to a point where it just felt like one thing after another and nothing was working out for me. And so when I kind of had that like time off after the 2019 season going into 2020, I said to myself that my New Year's resolution was going to be regardless of what happens this year, knowing that at the time, like Tokyo 2020 was going to happen, I was going to live in the moment, ride the wave, and have fun. And so that just kind of like became really applicable to everything I was doing in life, whether it was in school, whether it was, you know, my other obligations that I do outside of school and training, like my volunteer work, all that stuff. I was just going to be very present in everything I did. And when, you know, the whole lockdown happened, in a way I wasn't shocked because I was like, great, a couple injuries, disqualifications, now a global pandemic, like nothing really phases me at this point anymore. So, yeah, I kind of just like took it with a grain of salt. I was, of course, upset when I found out that, you know, the games were not happening, but I signed up for summer classes right away because I was like, oh, I'm going to have time this summer now. So signed up for some more school and just like really, I did everything I could. Like training in lockdown was obviously not easy, but I also didn't hate it either. Like I was able to kind of do things that I don't usually get to work on. Just like kind of fine tuning little weaknesses and making them strengths. I did a lot of biking in my basement, a lot of weightlifting because I was able to get like a pretty decent gym set up. So that was a positive, and like kudos to my parents for making that happen when the lockdown first happened. And then, you know, when the weather got better, I was like oddly enjoying like running hills at Riverdale with like Alicia and Misha and like all my teammates. Like we were just like, it was so awesome because I think COVID just like showed us how we kind of take what we have for granted until you don't have it. So like being able to see each other at training every single day and being able to be on a track in a beautiful facility. We definitely took those things for granted before. So when we were actually able to come together and do some stuff like that and like run outside, we just like had fun with it as much as possible. So it was really, the 2020 mantra was just like having fun, but kind of making yourself better where you can and maintaining where you can. And, you know, that summer when the tracks were able to open again and we got back onto like somewhat of a normal training regimen for about, I wouldn't even say it was like 10 weeks. Me and all my teammates PB'd in every single one of our testing. Like what we did, I did a 30-second run, the 400-meter runners did a 45-second run, 30 fly testing, like everyone was setting personal bests. And so like it was kind of crazy because none of us were expecting that. We were expecting to maybe hopefully even getting close to what we would normally be running at. And I think like lockdown was really good in a lot of sense because, again, it allowed you to focus on kind of fine-tuning things that you don't have time to usually focus on in the past. And also just like really finding like the love for the sport again. Like I didn't have to continue training, but I wanted to, and I wanted to get better, and like I just like had fun at the end of the day. I was really lucky to also have my sister, who is a soccer player, and like we were kind of holding each other accountable and like working out together. She was also coming to run Riverdale Hills with us, so she was definitely a really key part of that, because I don't know, if like some days were really hard to like get up and like sit on the bike in my garage and pedal for like 30 minutes, you know? So yeah, I guess that was it in a nutshell.
It's so interesting because I've spoken with so many athletes who have had this shift in mindset because of the pandemic. And yes, it was hard. And yes, it was, horrible in lots of ways. But it's just fascinating to me how many athletes have this different perspective now. And I loved what you said there about I didn't have to train, but I was doing it because I wanted to. And it sounds like there was something that really needed to happen in a way for you to go into Tokyo, in not only the shape, but also the mental perspective that you had going in is probably, contributed hugely to your success. So you talked about taking the pressure of the podium away, but I also at the same time have to imagine like you've wanted a podium for a long time and you knew you were in great shape going into Tokyo. So what were your goals going into these games, if not necessarily to podium? What did you want to get out of this Paralympic experience that maybe was different from Rio?
Yeah, like, of course, like I know, of course, being on the podium is attainable. It's attainable for any girl in my class. The margins are so tight, and that's what makes it so great and competitive. And I'm actually so lucky to be in such an amazing field of women. Like, we have so much fun together too. Like, in the call room beforehand, we're all just like talking and laughing and joking around. And like, there was at one point too, when we were waiting in the tunnel, Living on a Prayer came on, and like everyone just started like belting it out and like just like having a good time. And that was like my main goal, was just come in and have fun. Because when you're relaxed and you're having fun, that's when you're running fast. So I tried to just emulate that as much as possible and really enjoy and be so present. Like, I think I was so present that it almost feels like it didn't happen. Like, I wasn't focusing on anything else. I was just so focused on like being there. And it was almost to a point where it was like euphoric. So that's where I think like I achieved what I wanted to achieve. But of course, like, in terms of like actual timed goals, I really wanted to run sub 13 and sub 27. That was like, I was literally 0.7 seconds off of doing that. So I came really close. Those were like my actual time goals coming into the games, because I knew that was like really possible. But at the same time, it was like set personal best. So I set a personal best of like half a second in the 200 and a smaller personal best in the 100, but it was, I guess, better than nothing for that. But yeah, like, again, I wasn't really necessarily putting all my focus into the podium, because I don't know, like looking at the world rankings, and I was actually ranked 8th in the 100 coming into this games in terms of like, the times and everything, because there's a lot of girls that actually run sub 13 in my class. But I also kept telling myself, I was like, Marissa, you're in shape to do it. It's about who comes out on the day to compete. And I knew I was in the best mindset and physical shape possible to go out there and compete on the day. So I just kept telling myself those things, and then it was just about execution. Those were my goals, like PB, go out there and have fun and execute. And I think I checked off each one of those boxes.
Yeah, it's maybe a bit cliche, but you hear this so often, where if you can focus on the things you just talked about, enjoying it and executing and trying to, run your best race, that's often when the medals come, right? Like, that's often when you're actually rewarded the most, in a weird way, when you take the pressure of that reward away. All of that being said, I have to ask what it felt like crossing the line, knowing that you had just won your first Paralympic medal. Did you know in the moment? Because it was a very close finish.
So I didn't know right away. I had to wait till like the board came up, because it was a photo finish. But like I said, the whole experience was very euphoric. Like, I'm pretty sure I blacked out in that race. Like, I don't really remember much at all. Because I was just like so focused. Like that's where I think I unlocked like a different level of like something I'd never achieved before. Yeah, like I was like 80% sure I caught the girls at the line, but I was like, oh, they're so tall. They're like 6 feet. I was like, maybe they outleaned me. I have no idea. But I was just like about half a step in front of them. And yeah, I mean, I saw that time come up, and I screamed at first because I was like, what did I just do? And I don't know if you can see it in like the end of the race or whatever, but like the individual, Marlene Van Ganswinkel, who won the gold medal, she came up to me and I was like, what did I just do? And she goes, you just won a Paralympic medal. And I was like, what? So that whole experience, I think it's still like trying to sink in. But yeah, like it was definitely a crazy experience. I got 3 hours of sleep that night because I was just trying to like answer everybody on social media, and there was like an overwhelming amount of stuff coming in. Like Justin Trudeau tweeted me, Mayor John Tory from Toronto tweeted me. They gave me a day in Markham. September 3rd is now Marissa Papakonstantinou Day. So there was just like so many things. I was like, what is happening in my life right now? Like, this is crazy. It really started to sink in more, I think, when I was on the plane coming home, and people that were like kind of familiar about the Paralympics, because shout out to CBC, they did a great job covering this Paralympics, because I've never actually been more recognized in my life. Just telling people that I like won a bronze medal, like having those words kind of come out of my mouth was where it kind of set in more. So yeah, I think like when I was coming home, it was where it felt more real.
Yeah. It's going to take some time probably to realize that that's now part of your identity and will be for the rest of your life, which is so exciting. I have to ask, where is your medal now? What are you doing with it? Do you have it?
It's on my dresser. Like it's in a special little container here.
Can we see it? I know our audience won't be able to see it, but I want to take a look. This thing is huge.
And also, like, for people who are not seeing this, it has like the Braille on it as well for like the visually impaired athletes, which is really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah. And
wow.
Then it also says like the event on the bottom.
Oh yeah, athletics women's 100 meter T64. How special, Marissa. That's amazing. Wow. Well, I know that you do a lot of public speaking and inspirational talks, and not that you needed a piece of hardware to give you any more credibility, but I'm sure that anytime you do talks from now on, this is going to be a huge part of that, and especially to kids, and just inspiring the next generation of athletes coming up through our sport. It's so exciting. So I'm curious, Marissa, because you talked about growing up and starting an able-bodied sport. But of course, you are a Paralympian. And the other thing we should mention is that you are the only track and field female athlete to win a medal at either the Olympics or Paralympic Games this summer. All of our other medalists were male.
Really?
Yeah. You're our only woman.
That's crazy. Well, I'm glad to be able to represent then, because...
Yeah. but on that note, I'm so curious what it means to be... What representation means to you, both from a parasport perspective, but also as a young female athlete. I know, again, this is a big part of what you do in your work and your volunteering. Maybe you can speak a bit to the importance of representation and what that journey's been like for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start with like Rio in 2016, because coming into that games, I just assumed that like the Paralympics were equally covered like the Olympics. And so when people were asking me how to watch and where do I go to watch, I said, don't you just turn on the TV? But I learned really quickly, my naive 16-year-old self, that was not the case at the time. It was actually extremely difficult to even find an online stream to watch my races in Rio. And so that kind of like sparked something in me. And that's actually where I realized I really wanted to get into sport media, was to improve the coverage of parasport in Canada, because you see other countries like the UK, the Paralympics are huge there. And I know that's obviously closely related to the fact that, they started the Paralympics, but it's just taken off so much. And I want that to hopefully one day in Canada kind of emulate the same thing. And so, I was so fortunate to have a really great role model. Her name's Stephanie Reed. She competes for the UK. She actually used to compete for Canada, and her husband's also Brent, who is like our champion wheelchair racer for Canada. And I was so lucky to have her as a role model because I didn't really know about para track or the opportunities about getting a prosthetic blade and all that stuff if it wasn't for her. She was really the reason why I kind of wanted to get into it in the first place. And so I hope that I can be that same person for a lot of other young people out there. But having had said that, you need that word to be spread. And, I knew Stephanie because I met her at a War Amps Champs conference, and that was how I had that, role model. But, for someone who maybe lives in like Northern Canada and has no idea about any of the opportunities that exist, it's so important to have that representation in the mainstream media. And so that's where I really give kudos to CBC for this games because, again, like I was saying, like I've never been more recognized in my life. And I think that, and the reason why people were recognizing me too was they saw my prosthetic blade. And so it's something that now people can recognize and know what it is as opposed to looking at it and being like, what is that thing? That looks really weird. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, the representation has increased dramatically. And so I think, like I said, for my practicum, I'm doing, trying to grow parasport at the grassroots level because there are very few cases like myself where I've kind of grown up in the program. But I honestly think after this Paralympics, we're going to see a lot more young kids with disabilities getting involved in sport. And that's something that I'm thoroughly excited for. And again, as being like a woman too, that also has a disability, it's, again, important to have those role models because, again, if I didn't have Stephanie, I honestly don't know what pathway I would currently be on. I don't know if I even would have found, like, media and the current program I'm in school for because, obviously, like, everything in life has, like, led me to this point where I'm at today. And so, but that all started with just, like, seeing something, envisioning myself doing it, and kind of taking it from there.
Incredible, Marissa. Well, we wish you the best of luck, of course, with your degree and with your practicum. So I know that you've just returned home. You're less than a week away from this incredible Paralympic experience, and I don't want to pull you out of that too quickly. But I have to ask, what are you thinking about now in terms of future goals? I mean, I know you're really focused on school at the moment, but we're less than a year away now from the next World Championships as well. And of course, things move quickly in the world of sport. So how are you feeling about your future athletic goals?
Yeah, I'm feeling good and confident. I mean, I'm definitely enjoying my time off right now. I don't think I've really put a whole lot of thought into like what's next because like school is such a priority right now. But having had said that, I think this games has really proven to me that I forgot to mention this, but like in the 200 final, I like surprised myself that I was in the front of the race. Like I literally had a thought in my head mid-race. I was like, oh my God, why am I up here? And now I think that's just going to be an expectation moving forward. I know I am and deserve to be up at the front of that race now. And so I think it's just going to come now that this experience is going to pull me to World Championships next year and being at the front of that race and really executing and hopefully maybe doing a little bit better than a bronze medal.
Well, we're so excited to follow that journey with you, Marissa. How can folks learn more about you or follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Marissa_PAPS, that's Paps. And then my TikTok is the same, but without the underscore. And then my Twitter is also Marissa_Paps.
Fabulous. And we will link all of that in the show notes for this episode. Marissa, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us on the Shakeout podcast today. I hope you are able to celebrate and enjoy and reflect and do all of those great things over the next couple of weeks. And of course, good luck with all of your schoolwork as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
You can learn more about all of our Canadian Paralympians by visiting the Tokyo 2020 tab at runningmagazine.ca. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Shakeout Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our show anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're enjoying these stories, please consider leaving us a review. We'll be back next week with another rundown and more great Canadian running coverage. Until then, stay safe and healthy. We'll chat soon.